My name's Paul Higgins. I'm your host today. My responsibility into the training provider market space is around growth and innovation as a business development manager. I've known Jan for many a years as well and followed and worked with him as well. And we really enjoy having these sessions with guest speakers as well to enjoy that. Little bit of house rules. Please use the chat facility. You have any questions as we start this session. I will do my best then to interrupt Jan in his flow to put him off guard. And then perhaps I may ask you to bring your questions to life for Jan in the actual sessions. But as I say, hopefully it's going to be 45 minutes of open collaboration, question and answer sessions, and hopefully the objective today be quite clear. Just learn something that you didn't know before we started the session, and even more important, if you can apply it tomorrow, even better. But I just want to set the goal at a point that hopefully we can actually all achieve and hopefully have a successful session today. So thank you very much for that. Jan, I'd like to perhaps have this opportunity for you to introduce yourself as the sponsor.
Thank you. Quite a flowing start. Good afternoon, everybody. Assuming we're all in the same time zone. I'd love to see if people are where people are dialing in from. I see George is in Glasgow, by the way. I'm based in London. I'm sitting in northwest London at the moment, even. So yeah, really curious. What I'll do is I'll start our traditional start, which is I'm going to give you an overview of what we do in as Missio. So this is always the famous moment where we're going to see a lot of how do you say that kerfuffle around trying to share my slides, which is an exciting moment, although always, if not a challenge. Talk amongst yourself kind of story there. Yes.
Well, I sometimes I do like that silence. It gives you that time to pause and think.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's. I think that's a valid point. Um, if everything went well, you should see a slide. Is that correct?
That we have your full attention.
Wow. Well, in that case, yeah. What does Emissio do? Emissio, making more training impact. That's what we work with training companies, training providers. Those are our customers. And what we do as a business, we have set out that we would like to, well, help people one learner at a time, so very personalized. And the way we do that through training providers is improving training impact with technology, content, and consultancy. So how people learn and then translate that with technology as well. Training providers and associations, by the way, are our customers because associations quite often are also training providers. What do we then practically do? What does this mean? Well, we quite often talk about quality, which is capability of training providers. We help them design, create, deliver their training courses. Quite often that means transforming from an instructor-led element to a blended or digital version and proving impact. And that's actually a topic we're talking about today, which we use Emissio SIP for, and New Spring is the blended learning platform we use. We also talk about capacity or the quantity, getting you more learners. So that's we help training providers with workshops such as pricing and content strategy, pricing strategy. But we also help with content, creating that or helping with that. And we like the community element. So we like an evidence-based approach. So we work with universities, we commission research sometimes, but then we would like to share that. And one of the ways of sharing is like what we do right now, these webinars. We also have a newsletter. So if you're interested in that, sign up for it. And we also organize a conference. Here is, by the way, some more information about that conference. If you think that might be relevant for you, who comes to the conference? Directors of training companies. It's taking place on the 23rd of October this year in London in the Royal Horse Guards Hotel. You can see from the picture, it's a nice place. The QR code will get you to the Eventbrite page if that's of your interest. Creating value, you can see there, is the theme this year. Um, so that's really what we do practically. What are our principles? Well, we do believe that training very much is a people business. I know everybody talks about AI, etc., but technology is there for scaling and consistency and personalization. But training remains a people business. And what is the impact that we make then? Well, we've been serving about just over 100 customers. Some of them win awards. We help them with that. And we've enabled about just over 1.5 million learners. So we do work at scale. And we've added some revenue for our customers as well, as you can see there. So that's where I want to leave it for today. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, Jan, thank you very much for that very slick introduction. As anyone who's on these calls, we do like to time Jan, and I must say he is improving. So his time management training has improved
I took the
his
course.
quest. And obviously, you talked about impact, measurement, and everything like that. But obviously, I suppose the best way to perhaps for me to start off this sort of discussion, Jan, is really, what do you see as the trends, the latest trends in the training industry related to obviously to our subject today?
Well, that's a good question. If we talk about trends in training and learning, then um, I, I'm going to give that another slide share just to
Okay.
visualize what I'm talking about. Not because I want to do a death by PowerPoint session here. That's not the objective at all. But um, let's talk about a few things then. So, trends in learning and training. I'm sure that there are lots of sources that you already use for that. But if we look at four elements, I call it here from art to science. A lot of training that has happened in the past was more based on art than on science, in the sense that a lot of training that happened was based on being a subject matter expert in a particular topic,
Hmm.
and then, um, training others into that. That doesn't always mean that people are educationalists. So, over the last, I'd say, 15 years, a lot more developments have been coming through in neuroscience, but also in how people learn. That would be more of an area of the psychology. So, and there are some great examples of how that has translated. Actually, I'll share a few. You can see a book here, What Makes Training Really Work. If it really, I do have the book. It's right here. um, it's a great book by Ina Weinbauer Heidel. She's from Switzerland, and that gives a good indication and a good view of learning transfer. Uh, Other elements from art to science, for example, how people learn, I would highlight a book that is called Make It Stick, where there's a lot of how people learn examples in there. Actually, I'll show 2 slides down some of these examples.
Okay.
And that has led from art to science, also in more and more data becoming available, more research being done, and that has improved measurability. Now, measurability is how do you measure what learning actually took place? Or if you want to go a bit further with that, what impact you made on the organization as a training provider or as an L&D person. So that measurability with more data becoming available is now more possible than, to be fair, it was in the past. But also the level of measurability, because when we talk about measuring, a lot of people still talk about the survey they do at the end of the training. That's not measuring measurability. That's not measuring learning taking place or behavior changing. So we have some ideas that we'll talk about further in this conversation on how we can actually enable that. And of course, then technology has gone further. I alluded to it earlier already. Technology helps with personalization of learning, scalability of learning, um, making sure that things really are, the audiences are reached in different versions, different ways, different modalities.
Hmm.
So that all helps as well. And then the last point on there, it says training impact and learning transfer. Just to clarify those two terms, training impact is the impact that we make as trainers, and learning transfer is what you learn. So the learner, what they learn in a learning environment, that could be a classroom, that could be a digital course, and then are able to apply that in their work. Now, that learning transfer quite often is seen as, and there's quite a lot of research on, between 10 and 20%. So, in other words, if you learn 10 things, maybe one or two you actually apply in your work. That's not high. That's actually very low. So, our mission is to improve that. So that's some answers to that learning and training part.
Yeah, yeah, Jan, just before you move on, we talk about training impact as well. In your experiences, when we talk about training impact, when does that actually happen in the process?
When does it happen in the process? Well, training impact starts or should be measured before training happens, way before. Quite often, organizations will do a training needs analysis. Well, I say quite often. Um, if it already happens, it doesn't happen that often, I think. I'd love to hear from people here in the room what their experience is. But every training provider I've been talking to tells me, well, when I walk into that room, I didn't get much data before, and the data I did get wasn't always right from what the people were in the room actually. Is that can we open that up? Can we ask that? What do people in the room feel?
Yeah, if they could put those responses into the chat, that'd be really great. And then there's another point while people are just putting some of their responses in the chat there, Jan. I was doing some work actually for an auditing organization as well. That one of the parts of that, the impact is obviously gathering feedback.
Mhm.
And what was quite interesting is that they openly wanted obviously to get feedback, but they didn't have any mechanisms how to manage it, and it was quite a large AO. And I was surprised when I went to that meeting, and we were talking about how we're gathering obviously information and data, but they had no way of actually capturing it. They would ask for it, but had no real way of capturing and managing that. So they could never actually influence, positively change their delivery either, which this day and age quite scared me a little bit. I'm not saying we've got those experiences today on the session, but yeah, sometimes, like I say, it's not about putting your head in the sand. It's sort of, we do need to change, because if we don't change, we'll be taken over by someone that is actually changing their organization as well. So yes. So David, I saw that you just put something in the chat there. David, just for everybody on the session, did you just want to perhaps bring that to life for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for bringing me in. Yeah, it's interesting. I end up the majority of our clients are public sector, so government, local authorities, etc., etc. You know what public sector is.
Mhm.
Um, so therefore, we often win contracts through tendering and pitching, and it always amuses me that when I get invited to do a physical pitch, they almost always include one of the questions around impact and evaluation. And I'm obviously so long in the tooth, Paul, that now my gut reaction to that question is to burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And because it's a pitching and therefore a sensitive area, they're obviously intrigued by this and ask the question why you burst out laughing. And their own response is pretty much what I've put into my message there. Everybody raises this question, but very few of them do well, they actually do very little research into current competency levels, where organizations are at the moment, what's required. And if they're going on to looking at true evaluation, again, it's very rare do they realize that that starts at the very beginning. They've got to realize where they are now as an organization and establish the metrics that they will then go on to measure throughout the program. So it's just like a polite question to ask without them ever doing any prior forethought, really,
Yeah,
around
yeah.
what's required to evaluate impact.
And I think what you just said that that it's all we have to throw it in there because we feel that that's the right thing. But actually, the substance behind it, this is what troubles me sometimes. I go to lots of conferences as well, and I speak to lots of training providers as well. Do you know what? We all talk about impact, and then we park it and we leave it in the corner because we've done our job, but we've never actually taken it and actually done it, pivoted it basically into business. Business measurement as well. It's really quite scary in some respects as well. So thanks for bringing it to life. And I say that's what the whole purpose of today's all about. And so thanks for that. Haley, did you want to bring your element to your response into the chat to life as well for us, please?
Yes, certainly. Can you hear me?
I can
Yeah,
indeed, and lovely
yeah,
accent, by
sorry.
the
Thank you. I'm very valleys. Right.
way.
I'm a sales director for a training organisation down in South Wales, and I deal with every sector:
Yep.
construction, manufacturing, production, food and drink, councils, housing, you name it. We've done training for over 30 years. What I tend to find is, as I sell the training and speak to a lot of people who purchase the training, like in L&D and HR, what I tend to find is they may have requests come to them, but that person will be the person who organises the training. But a lot of the time, they are not understanding of what the needs are, for example, on the shop floor. Okay. So then often I'll speak to the ops director, the health and safety manager, etc., who does know these candidates and knows what's happening day to day, and also is quite observant of the skills that these people are lacking. So we often have a lot of last minute bookings where, have you got a date next week, etc., or we need IOSH, or we need, it's more compliance areas. Whereas even though we have got funding in South Wales for certain schemes that we are on the framework for, what we find is it's like the last few months, I'm giving dates here, there, everywhere. People are looking to plan things in, but when you go to them, it's like, oh, we can't do that date now because production can't allow those amount of people off work to do it. So it comes to the situation then, well, are you committed for these people needing the skills? You've obviously identified it. You've identified for all these months gone by that there is a need for this training, but yeah, you still won't commit to releasing those staff, even though there is funding for you, where you basically, a lot of the time, it could be free for them, or they've only got to pay a percentage. So where it comes to, there is some good companies we deal with who are really big invested in their employees, which is great. And it's lovely. We've worked with them for years to see that journey with loads of them, because you get to see them keep coming back, and that's really great. But a lot of these larger companies, they don't do that. And it is more, they're more reactive than proactive and planning in. And that is quite a lot I notice with all the sectors we deal with. And it is very common in Wales.
Yeah. And there's another point that you're touching on there as well, which really intrigues me, is that I have a training matrix, which gives me a snapshot of all my staff in some respects. So you hypothetically know the title or where the skills gap is, type of thing, but don't really address it. But also what I found is that what you were talking about, I need to put these people on a course. I need to put that person on a course. And then for whatever reason, they can't prioritize that individual's time to go on the course. And then what you find is then you just get like a mushroom effect as well, is that the thing that's sometimes broken in the chain is also the management language. Why are we actually doing it for our business as well? So it's great that, Paul's going to go and do a motor intelligence leadership course or something like that. But there's also a mechanism from a reporting perspective of the purpose of why I'm actually doing it and what is the benefit to the business as well. I find that seems to be coming through as well.
Yeah, I also think, Paul, that a lot of the time in organisations, especially your larger companies, over 49 employees, I think a lot of the time senior or the people at the top don't even know what training is taking place in the organisation. And I always try and emphasize to the people, my customers that I deal with, is that a lot of the time when we do a lot of our management courses and supervisory courses, that a lot of the candidates often have a moan about higher managers and middle managers. It's like I hold a lot of their secrets, these customers. But they do. They all like to have a moan, and I'm here to listen to their whims and woes. But I do feel that, and I try to tell them, once those people leave our training course and they love it and they've loved the training and they took so much away, are you then supporting that back in the workplace as an organisation? And the majority of the time, it's not. It's a tick box exercise. Oh, they've done that. There's their cert. Upload it on the matrix. Or they are done now until it's needed again. But it's not. And a lot of businesses have actually lost staff. They've come on training with us, and they've decided, that's took me to a place, that course has, and they've changed jobs and they've left there. And I just feel, like I said, it's the hierarchy. And when training's involved, it's not just a training department or L&D person or HR manager. It needs to be a journey, I think, as an organisation. And if they add that support from a higher up, because it should, a lot of the time it's the senior managers that need the training, but they don't think they need training. And that's why the majority of the level of courses we sell are your first line manager, supervisory, managerial level. The senior tend to walk away, or we don't need training, or we haven't got time.
Yeah, Hayley, I think you're making some really good, valid points there. Jan, I mean, that really sort of, are we actually asking, what the question is, what are the customers asking for in some respects here as well? Just wonder if you've got any viewpoints on that, Jan.
Great question. What are customers asking for? Well, we're getting more and more data on that. So let's look at some sources of that. Yes, I know. You know the drill. I'm going to share my screen. So I just got something for you there. Just 1 second. I think that's what I got here is Don Taylor's GSS, Global Sentiment Survey. I put the link in the slide as well. So if you want to look that up, Donald Taylor is GSS. Sorry, he's been doing this for well over 10 years. So there's a lot of data there, and if you can see, he only asks one thing in this survey. What is hot next year? And he asks this mostly to the people that answer it are usually L&D people across the world. You can see here 3,339 people answered this question, so it was roughly the same last year. So it's a good number of people. And of course, no surprise there, AI is seemed to be hot in L&D. That won't surprise anyone. That was there last year as well. But if we look through that list and if we try to group a few of these elements, there are a few things here that are really jumping out. One is the ability to look at data. So, for example, skills-based talent management quite often goes towards data. Learning analytics, I guess it does what it says on the tin. What are there others? Performance sport might fall in that area. And if we look at another group or category, if you like, I would say adding value to the organization. That's what L&D, of course, tries to do a lot. So you can group things in there, such as reskilling, upskilling, personalization sits in there. Showing value, number 6, consulting more deeply with the business. Those are coaching, mentoring, could fall in that. So there are quite a few things that showing value, and that data analytics part has always been tricky because a lot of L&D or some criticism on L&D quite often is that they learn how to create content and work on that, for example, but data analytics is not a skill set that is or was in the most L&D education itself. That said, we found in our research that also a lot of training providers, data analytics, not necessarily a skill set that sits in the business. So that doesn't help the application of data in itself as well. So that means that luckily more and more tools are coming onto the market to help that. So there's help of that. Of course, I'm going to tell you that we created one of those tools as well, Immisio SIP. We'll come to that point for talking about what that means. Just some others. If you're looking for information, don't just take our word for it. Here's some people that will help you get more information on these topics. So, for example, Kirkpatrick learning model is probably something you already know. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Will Thalheimer created the learning transfer evaluation model, LTEM. That is a broader and more detailed version of what Kirkpatrick did. So Kirkpatrick has 4 levels. Will Thalheimer is like 13 levels, I think, 12. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a lot more detail. Nick Shackleton-Jones here in the UK is a great person to follow on how people learn. Very much a person who supports the part and really also believes on there is a room for people in training. It's not just all digital and AI. So very good person to follow on that. I just showed you the book earlier from Ina. Melanie Martinelli actually bought the business from Ina. So she's based in Switzerland and she does a lot of work and very much expanding on that topic of learning transfer and helping consultants also in the UK. So if you're interested in that kind of topic, talk to Melanie. Make it stick. Sorry, that's a book. This was published in 2014, but really has good information on what makes people learn. If you allow me, actually, I'll show a bit of that. I just talked about Don Taylor. Don does a lot with Egle Vineskaite. She is very good in how AI influences and works on the L&D side, how it changes work. And of course, Laura Overton. Laura Overton, a researcher in the UK who does a lot of work on how the learning profession and therefore the training profession helps. Laura also works with us on our conference with the program. So definitely somebody that worth following there. If I just go to another slide, we see, sorry, just messing you up here. I did talk about make it stick. There are quite a few things here that help people learn better. And that is really a lot of what we help with as well. So from retrieval practice, spaced repetition and adaptivity, those are featured collaborative working. Those are all elements that technology can help a lot with nowadays. For example, we talk about a new Spring, which is a platform for training providers specifically that will help you put that into your design. So definitely some information here to maybe share. That's it.
Yeah, thanks just for those sort of links. And I was frantically looking and providing some of those links into the chat, and I'll continue throughout. But I think what we're talking about also is what is the challenge, I think, for training providers as well, is that from the point that you showed, obviously, with inside Don Taylor's graph, obviously, was upskilling, reskilling. And what I was just sort of thinking about is what is our responsibility as training providers to really to work in collaboration with that as well? Because if you look at all the industries, if I look at the water utility sector or something like that, in the next 5 to 10 years, 50% of the workforce is going to retire. And it's right across the board. And what I'm thinking about when we're looking at the programs that we deliver and whether we tailor that, or we talk about that, you talked about personalization earlier there, Jan, is how better can we do that? Because what we're at a pivoting point in some respects of how do we bring in young entrants, young persons into challenging market spaces. You know, I mean, I think I did a report once before about, I'm talking about practical skills here. My apologies, Jan, I should mention that. But, you know, I think in welding, I think there was a report done by, I think it was in the US, in the shipbuilding. You know, 400,000 welders are needed. You know, so how do we use technology, training, personalization to basically improve and attract the right people for the right skills that we have coming through to be work ready as well? I think is a big question, but I do believe that in what we're talking about here today is one step in that to look at the, we look at the impact, we look at the business strategies, we look at the ROI. They in isolation do not solve anything, but bring those all together, then I think we start to have a different picture and how we can actually change things. And yeah, I mean, it does scare me with the should we say the people coming from education into be work ready, that they're not. And it's how can we think about our programs and how we design our programs, even with it's got more sort of you know motivational intelligence built into them that helps personalize it as well. But I think, like I said, we have to start from somewhere. And I think, as we started this whole discussion about that data analysis element to it, of who is our target audience, before we get too excited and start throwing training at them. I think it's really important. So I think for me it's
I think you make a
talk about
fantastic point. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm sorry. I apologize, Paul. I wanted to respond to two of the points you made there, because one is a lot of people are leaving sectors. You just gave the example of the water utilities sector. Sorry. The same thing in construction, where there's an aging population, lots of people leaving the construction sector. But also it needs about, and this is just from London, by the way, 100,000 people over the next few years coming into construction just to fill up the people that are leaving. Green skills, same story. I had a meeting with the Global Solar Council. So we're talking about what is happening in the world around solar energy. Currently, 7 million people around the world work in solar energy. And that will increase by another 3 million in the next 4 years. So the problem is scale. Well, the experienced people are leaving. So how do you solve that? Well, one of the elements, of course, is doing things not only more scalable, which brings you from an instructor-led model to a digital, but more effectively actually a blended model. And secondly, if and when you train those people, it has to be really impactful. So using impactful methodologies, we talked about how people learn, taking that kind of science into account, but also when we train people, that it's relevant for those people when we train them. So that measurability, science parts, scalability, that all becomes more and more important. And actually, we can't walk away from it. Sorry, that was a very long monologue. I'll leave you now.
No. But I think the question is, how do we help training providers? Denise made a very interesting point. Denise, I don't know if you just want to bring that to life again. My apologies. I like people to have conversation in these sessions. Denise, you were just talking. Denise, sorry, you were just talking about the younger trainees and the use of virtual reality as a tool. Could you just bring that to life for us a little bit as well, if that's okay?
Yeah, like Jan just mentioned, the construction industry. I teach construction professionals, and if I take a bunch of construction professionals who have been doing this for 40 years and have them do hands-on training, they will like it. If I take the new associates who are new to the workforce and give them something like virtual reality so they can practice in a safe haven, they're more up to using it. Whereas the senior guys, you put the goggles on them and they're like, whoa, what is this? And they're not willing to go any further. So, but the virtual reality, make it like a video game, it works. And I use the example sometimes in my training of Enron, which I've had to stop using because I've had people in the class raise their hand and go, who's Enron? And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
time to rescale it for the younger audience.
Yeah. But hey, the point, Denise, you're making there as well is that sometimes you have to look back before you go forward. So I was delivering once to the future of education, and the president of this environment, he said, so the future of education is 3D, virtual reality. Denise, do you know when the very first time that 3D technology was ever used?
No, not off the top of my head.
1834, I believe it was, by a gentleman by Charles Wheatstone. I know this is not a history lesson, by the way, but the fact is his work is still used, and I think it's King's College London still believe that he's the father of virtual reality. and we're going back so far. But I think that's why, I think, like I said, when we talk about innovation and where does it stem from and everything like that, I think it's great that, when we can talk about, you know, wise practices, should we say, that seem to be doing a sort of a 360 in some respects, coming back into it. But your point is, and I was talking about the welding there, the way that they are actually engaging with new entrants and getting people into that sector is actually augmented. So basically, they're doing welding absolutely with the same equipment, other than using the heat because of the waste of materials. I know it's not. I know we're probably going slightly off subject here, but it's about using the right tools for the job. And what they do now, there's a company in Spain that literally you put the same weight of all the equipment, the goggles, and the technology measure your accuracy and the quality of your welding that is simulated before they put them into a hot welding environment. So it reduces costs and it increases the uptake of people into that profession. So I think that's brilliant. And when we talk about dyslexia as well, the companies have to wake up to say, actually, we do have a challenging workforce coming through with lots of people with labels. But I think one label that sometimes missed is that actually people have superpowers and companies need to sort of focus on those sort of superpowers. Anyway, I will go off on another tangent, so I'm very cognizant of that I will not do that today. But I'm very passionate about actually doing the right thing. But Jan, how else do you see that we can help training providers in this sort of approach that we're talking about today there, Jan?
To a no surprise, let's share another screen. Here, Kirkpatrick. We mentioned Kirkpatrick earlier, and there are different models than Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick's kind of seen as the godfather of this. If Kirkpatrick talked about 4 levels of learning, so the reaction to learning, which is what we measure. We all measure that in our training provider survey. I will call it the happy sheet. What did you think of the training? What did you think of the content, the trainer, the environment it was in? What do you intend to do better? Yeah, how will you use this? Those kind of questions are reaction to learning, but they don't measure the actual learning. To do that, and we talked about this at the beginning, you need to do a pre-training needs analysis measurement, and then on a regular basis, not just once, you need to post the training delivery also measure what happened. And this is so we created this Emissio SIP. Emissio SIP helps training providers, is a tool that helps you measure this. It helps you a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months after the training delivery to measure knowledge and skills. And it also includes the manager of that team to give their opinion. So it's not just a self-assessment. And the manager, of course, also validates if behavior changed. And we ask the manager to input also departmental goals that were relevant to that training. So, and not long-term goals, short-term goals, 2 or 3 months. We see quite a lot 3 months. So then there will be a tick box to see if those departmental goals were achieved. Now you might say, well, if that happens one time, it doesn't really prove a lot. No, this is something that you can do with all your customers on a continuous basis. So you're creating and you're getting a lot of data over time from and with your customers. It also helps you for those training companies that have more of a transactional relationship with their customers to actually create more of a longer term relationship because that questionnaire comes out regularly. And that becomes then more of a trusted advisor status as well, because you can, let's say that you talked about 10 things in your training session. You see that 7 of these actually land quite well, but 3 of those actually didn't really pick up at all. So you can actually go back to your customer after, let's say, a month or 2 and say, those 3 things didn't really land. Why don't we come back for a day or so and do a repeat session? Or if on a continuous basis, people tell you the same 3 things didn't land, you actually have an opportunity to improve maybe the design or the types of delivery of that training. So it also is a QA element, of course, it's in its own. So that's how we achieved those things together. What does that look in a workflow? Basically, you are the trainer. You probably have your own questions that you want to ask. We ask the learner to fill in their job title. That automatically then means that we know what knowledge and skills they need to have with that. So we populate that. They answer some questions on that. The manager gives their opinion, as we said. That comes back to you as the trainer as a report. Basically, this team is good at this and not so good at that. So you actually can design and deliver that training as you need it to be. And after that delivery happens, then that data comes on a regular basis back to you. So you can also create a loop of data back into your customer. Mm-hmm. So that's how we work on that.
Okay. Yeah, Jan, I'm just very conscious of time as well. But have you got a bit of a case study just to sort of wrap this up? Because there's obviously a couple of questions, obviously, about the how serious, obviously, do trainers, with the surveys and the frequency of that as well. But just wonder if you could just wrap that up in a little bit of a case study to date, just to put things into perspective for us.
Yeah, well, the case study is a difficult point at this point. We launched this in April, so this is a very new development. However, Ministry of Justice actually committed to do their workshops with this, so we will have good data coming in very soon. Also, we did a lot of research before this that informed this development. And what it means is that a lot of the data that it produces already has been said as, yes, this is the data that we need from actually from very sizable training providers. So this is, I think, filling in quite a good gap in that market. If you want to see it for yourself, that was a very Dutch accent, shelf, then please ask us for a demonstration. We will show you how it works. Yeah.
Okay. So what I normally finish off with is just before we close off, because obviously try to run to time. Equally, I won the same course as Jan. I was okay on the time management bit, but I just wondered before we close off if there's any other sort of questions. I see George, you put something in the chat, but if anyone's actually got any questions for Jan before we bring this session to a close, now is your time in some respects. So yeah, if you want to just come off mic and just throw things at Jan, I'm more than happy for that to happen and watch him squirm in some respects. So please inflict any pain on Jan that you wish.
Thanks, Paul.
No problem. It's about collaboration.
I see a question from Denise. In your experience, how often do trainers read and take seriously the trainer survey? Part of the Holy Grail. Yeah. The trainer survey on its own is a serious piece of work in the sense that it gets you some data, right? Just not the data that shows the learning. So it has a different function. How happy were people? Would they recommend you? Those are all, I will call that marketing data. So there is definitely a function to the survey, but to measure learning and to prove impact, you need to go further.
Yeah, I think really from where we start is that we are at a point where things need to change. And I think where I see things is that, though, it is what path do we need to go on in some respects. And I think what we need to probably do is build these out with some more case studies going forward, Jan, to give a little bit more substance in those real life stories, whether it's from the apprenticeships, from construction, because if you look at different industries at the moment, and I think one of our the panel today was talking about investment and funding. Construction is one that's getting an inordinate amount of funding coming through, and it'd be just to see what if there's all that funding put into it. What is the impact of that? What is the return on investment going to be on that? Just because it's a political thing, it'd be good that how we interpret that from a training provider perspective. How do we positively make our skill force greater than they've ever been before, because okay, it's a competitive market not only for training providers, but the sectors that are basically vying basically for those skilled workforces to come through, and support the skills gap, but also the growing workforce gap as well that we see coming forward. Haley and others just put in the chat as well, that this recording, which obviously includes the slide deck, will be shared to everybody that registered as part of the follow-up. That will be coming out. I always say within 2 days, because I know it normally takes about a day, so I'm okay with the KPIs on that one. From my perspective, I want to say thank you everybody for joining today. If you have any questions, I've shared Jan's LinkedIn profile, be on the email, and everyone else, say in the chat, we put all our contact details. We're more than happy to take any questions that you have going forward, and hopefully you will join us our next monthly webinar that will be in August. So we will probably be having more Hawaiian shirts on, more of a tan, hopefully. David, you look pretty impressed with that point. But I think today was just the tipping point of something that's a lot bigger that we do need to resolve. But I think we need to resolve it together and share ideas. And hopefully we can do that. Are we going to change the world tomorrow? No. But can we move the dial in a positive direction? And if we can just change it by 1%, then we'll be in a better place. Extremely more so, obviously, for the young people that are coming through, that I must say do need more direction. And it's quite scary when I go to my local school and say, right, give me 10 people that have got an interest in engineering. I've already lined them up to go and see some engineering directors and companies, because they just see a brick wall. They don't appreciate what's inside that and the opportunity there as well. So I say to education, you have a responsibility to create some interest. Directors of companies, you need to turn that interest into a passion, because you want the right workforce working for you to bring in the right skills. Anyway, that's a different subject for today. But listen, Jan, thank you so much for your insight to SIP. Obviously, people talk about what is SIP standing for, anything like that. I'm sure we can explain that, but I know what you like. So just say it's there, it's coming. If you want more information, contact Jan. Other than that, I'm going to say to everybody on the call today, thank you for your participation.